Hi guys, James from DBG here and welcome to another showcase video. Now this is something we haven't seen for a while. This is some bolt action. And this is one of my regulars. And here I've done some extensive bolt action German stuff for him. And these are a few odds and sods that he wanted done. And then something new, which are these infantry down below. But you can't see something. There you go. There is the King Tiger, King Tiger, Panther and King 6B, the King Tiger, which is Warlord's plastic kit. And then we have a resin Panther D, and then we have 3 half tracks of varying marks. We have this one over here, which is an SDKFZ 251/16 Flammen Panzerwagen, which is basically a armoured flamethrower vehicle. It's got 2 flamethrowers there. We have an SDKFZ 251/9 Stummel, which is the nickname that this short 75mm howitzer was given. And then we have an SDKFZ 251/2 Granatwerfer, which is basically a half track with a mortar stuck in it. And then last but not least, we have these guys down here. Now, these are Hungarians. They are Hungarian Paratroopers. And they are part of Warlord Games' new Hungarian range that they released just before this whole D-Day stuff they've been doing. For those of you who think Hungarian, they went to the Second World War. Well, yes, they were. They were very close to Germany throughout the interwar periods. Obviously, because the Austro-Hungarian Empire collapsed after the Second World War and everything broke up. Which is, that's a can of worms I could open trying to explain that, but I'm not going to. So it had Hungary, and it had bits of land taken off it in the Treaty of Versailles, and it wanted that bits of land back. And so we thought the best way to do it would be to cozy up to Nazi Germany, and then when Nazi Germany invaded the Soviet Union in June of 1941, these guys went along with. In fact, they actually attacked Yugoslavia first. These guys, these paratroopers, their first combat deployment was actually in Yugoslavia, which was, I believe, a couple of months before the Germans invaded Soviet Russia, which was designed to secure the Germans' southern flank, because the Italians were having a bit of trouble. But again, I could wax lyrical for a very long time about this. Anyway, the Hungarians actually fought very well and very bravely against the Soviet Union from 1941 right the way through to the end of the war in 1945. And most Hungarians actually, there's a massive battle in Hungary in the town of Budapest, in the city capital of Budapest. Hitler decided he wanted to keep one of his allies in the war, and so he chucked loads of stuff at the Hungarians, chucked a whole army group down into Hungary along the Danube to blunt the Russian advance. And unfortunately, it didn't last very long, a matter of weeks. And the Germans were defeated, and the Hungarians all pulled back to the west. And eventually, a large proportion of them surrendered to the Americans, who were advancing through Czechoslovakia. Anyway, history lesson over. Let's have a look at the models. Now, all these models are Warlord Games. So, this Flammen Panzerwagen, it has 2 flamethrowers in it, and these were actually designed to be dismounted. They had long hoses. You can just see the fuel tanks in there. They had long hoses attached to them. These are air intakes to help the pressure, to force the fuel out of the hoses. And they had a sort of a radius around this vehicle that they could squirt fiery death at people. And these were prime targets for the Soviet and Allied troops who came up against them. They weren't very popular because they did nasty things to people. And I have to say, this Warlord Games instructions, even in the plastic kits, aren't the best, and it was quite complicated arrangement of little parts in here below the, I think that's a compressor, an air compressor unit. There's parts of there that you can't really see with the crew in, but the instructions are very vague about how they went in, so I had to do lots of fiddling and dry run and actually pop the glue, the glued parts out when I realised I was making a mistake. Yeah, but anyway, there's the Flammer Panzerwagen, and the camouflage is the same way I always do, sort of semi-soft edge. I don't have an airbrush. I don't have the space or the money for an airbrush. But if you just use and I can't specify this enough, an old brush, and you thin your paints slightly more than you would, not too much, otherwise it will just run everywhere, and you sort of dab it on, and 2 thin coats of that, and then you do both colours. Then you do you can either do an all-over wash. I use Agrat's Earthshade, which is a perfect colour for doing World War II German vehicles. Either you do a pin wash around all the parts, or you do an all-over wash. I decided to do an all-over wash because I had the decals down and sort of seals the decals, even though I already sealed them with some matte varnish. And it sort of blends everything together, and then you just go back in again with your old brush, dabbing away with your original colours, and it gives you this really pleasing semi soft edge camo. Anyway, this is the 251-9 Stummel. Now they had, when they converted all the Panzer IVs to have long, and the Stugs and the Stug 3s to have long 75mm guns, they had loads of spare short 75mm guns, and I thought, what can I do? And they had all these purpose-built battle groups to help push back the Soviets and push back the Allies coming from both sides during Europe, and they decided to slap them onto these half-tracks for some mobile fire support for the Panzer Grenadier regiments and divisions that were busy fighting against the Americans, British, Commonwealth and Soviet forces. So this is the Stummel. It has a fixed, that is actually a ranging MG42, because the traverse of that is not very great. It's not a really good self-defense weapon, which is why I had the one at the back. It is purely for ranging, for seeing where your shots went. Load it with tracer rounds and away you go. So yeah, so that's the and this one, I'm trying to get my light so you can actually see inside. This one was a lot easier. There's actually a rack of shells down one side that you can't actually see very well with all the crew in. Much easier to build. Again, some of the positioning of the stuff in there is hard to see with the instructions, so it's a lot of trial and error. And here's the Granatwerfer. Oh, come on, light. Again, Warlord's plastic crew figures can be a bit hit and miss, and I have to say these guys are a little bit myth. The pose is very odd, to say the least, and the details on the back compared to their plastic infantry, not the greatest, but there you go. Anyway, so here's the mortar. As you can see, the mortar just goes in there, and this one was much easier to do. It's just a case of those ammunition boxes replace one of the seats when you build it. So there you go. There's the mortar. Now let's look at this. This is quite a hefty piece. It is resin and metal. The gun barrel is metal. A few of the accessories are metal. The tracks, the cleaning kit there, and the mud guards and what have you are all, come on, light, are all metal. So this is actually really easy to paint. It was actually, surprisingly easy to put together, all the extra bits, like the headlights and the smoke discharges there. Normally they're quite fiddly and refuse to glue, but this one's glued really well, so I'm actually really pleased with the way this turned out. The only unfortunate thing is, because of all the extra details that has been cast into the hull, the turret will not turn all the way around, and if it does, it has danger of chipping the tow cable there. And we also have these two Scherzen, which have been, the camo has been done to mirror the camo on the side of the hull. What's going on with my light? There we go. To mirror what's going on the side of the hulls, and one of them is purposely bent to represent damage, because obviously this being white metal is easy to bend. Now, the Konings Tiger, the King Tiger. Speaking about crew figures, this one's actually really well done. It's a single piece figure, so there's not really any gluing, but it's actually really nicely done. And it's turned out rather nice, including the pink, because the Panzer Corps had pink piping on their uniforms. Again, there we go, you can tell the turret here. This is the Porsche turret, which is the earlier production turret. It's got the Zimmerit on. Now, Zimmerit is a magnetic paste that the Germans plastered all over their late war vehicles to basically stop magnetic mines. But it turned out that the only people who used magnetic mines in the Second World War to stick to tanks were the Germans. So they decided not to do it anymore, because it cost a bit of money and it increased the production time of vehicles. The British Commonwealth forces, then the Americans, they tended to use the short-range bazookas and Piats. The Soviets had various other methods of taking out tanks, including the more unfortunate dog mines, which are dogs who were trained to run under tanks with a radio-controlled explosive device on their back. Unfortunately, they trained them with Soviet tanks, so the dogs tended to run back towards the Soviet lines and blow up their own tanks. So it was a bad idea, but a short-lived idea, thankfully, for those poor pooches who were exploded. Anyway, this one is actually an SS1. You have the cross keys there of the I'm going to get this wrong, and then the rivet counters get me. I believe it's Leibstandarte Adolf Hitler, or it could be Das Reich. I can't remember, but I believe it's Leibstandarte Adolf Hitler, which is the 1st SS Division. So there we go, there's the King Tiger. All this stuff here is, well, that's all pre-moulded on the tools that you had to glue on. And then last but not least, we have these guys down here. Focus. The Hungarians. Now this guy here, if I can just sort out the lights, come on. He is wearing, there we go. Come on, focus. There we go. He's on with a submachine gun, a Hungarian submachine gun, and he's wearing the Hungarian camouflaged smock, which is actually very similar to the British Denison smock. And he's the limited edition guy you get when you purchase the, I think it's Fortress Budapest campaign book from War Games. And here we have a MG42 team. Again, the Germans gave the Hungarians quite a lot of equipment. So there are the guys with the MG42. This is the NCO. Have you noticed a lot of them have moustaches, which was something Hungarians did quite a lot. They all cultivated fantastic moustaches, and I think it was officers had to have moustaches. I think I read that somewhere. I could be totally wrong. I'm sure someone will tell me. So they get, I mean, all the poses in this are actually really simple and really nice. Got this guy here shouting at the top of his lungs, blasting away with his SMG. These are really nice, really lovely the new style metal Warlord Games miniatures. So there you go, guys. That's another commission job done. These will now get packed up and shipped off to the client, and the next job is already here. There'll be a series of videos about that because it's quite a big one. So, as usual, please check out our affiliates, Goblin Gaming and White Shot Gaming, links in the description. Also check out us on Instagram and Facebook. We have a Twitter account, but we don't use it very much. But check us out on Instagram and Facebook. Chris is always posting up stuff, and I've started using Instagram again more regularly than I had been in the past. Do all the YouTube stuff, like and subscribe, share this around to all your friends who are like-minded people and like wargaming. And as usual, thank you guys for watching, and I'll catch you next time.